In Europe, an estimated number of 12 million people are Roma, half of them living within the European Union. But the living conditions are far beneath European standards. The Roma are the least integrated and most despised minority in Europe. A recent European survey shows the extent of discrimination in education, for instance. More than half of Roma children left school before the age of 16, compared with less than 1/3 of non-Roma children. The largest number of victims of discrimination and the most serious problems resulting from a lack of integration are to be found in the countries of Central and Southeastern Europe. Here, Roma often live in segregated areas outside cities and towns, and they often don't even have access to basic services such as piped water. 29% of Roma report they don't even have access to tap water, whereas the vast majority of non-Roma people in the same area do. Liberals ask themselves, do things really have to be like this? In response, the European Liberal Forum, together with the regional office of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, launched a project to support Roma integration. It's based on liberal principles.
European Liberal Forum, that is liberal political foundations, liberal institutes, liberal think tanks. We promote our liberal values in international conferences, seminars, workshops, and ELF is also publishing policy recommendations and studies.
The project was initiated in 2012 by Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom and its partners. Core liberal values like freedom, human rights and minority rights are at stake. Roma segregation and discrimination cannot be accepted by any European, and certainly not by liberals. Viktor Lilov is a Bulgarian music producer who works with Roma kids living in the Nadezhda neighborhood, a part of the city of Sliven.
Sliven is one of the large Bulgarian cities with a large Roma minority. There are two districts or ghettos. I'm calling them ghettos because they're quite isolated from the city structure where the Romas are living, and one of the ghettos is, you can find it behind the railway station of the city, and it's quite funny and sad at the same time because there is a large empty square in front of the railway station, and there is a pass under the rails where you can get to the ghetto through that pass from the railway station. And it's funny because when you get on the other side of the rails, behind the wall, you have the feeling that you cross 10,000 kilometers away from Sliven and you find yourself somewhere in Calcutta or a city like this. And it's funny, on the first sight it's quite funny, but then when you see people, the way they are living in the ghetto, it is quite different than the type of life and social quality of living in the city. Everything is dirty, water on the streets, or sewage even, and you don't feel much comfortable.
One outcome of the project was a detailed list of policy recommendations. Based on liberal values and principles, they address fundamental problems. The recommendations include, for example, start integration in kindergarten and school as early as possible. Combat segregation. Schools must not be allowed to have separate Roma classes. Encourage the entrepreneurial spirit of the Roma. Legalize non-official dwellings, and improve basic housing infrastructure.
So there's a situation. So there could be...
Dr. Istvan Radix was involved in formulating the policy paper. The proposals follow certain general principles. He singles out 3 of them as being the most important. The first one being the approach must be comprehensive.
So we have to look at the same time the educational, employment, housing, health, and social care related issues. So when we are dealing with the issue, we have to take into account the same time this five area of activity. I jump to the second main principle, which is, by my personal opinion, is very, very important, that we have to declare that on this issue the state is not omnipotent. There are several actors which have to take into account in the Roma integration process. Very important, the NGOs, the traditional Roma communities themselves, and also very important, the local governmental level. And the third one, there are some others, but I would like to emphasize is the so-called win-win approach. It's very important, maybe more important, to involve the majority society, Bulgarians, Hungarians, Romanians, etc., because without their cooperation, without their understanding, without their acceptance, we cannot do anything.
The European Liberal Forum and the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom would like to see the policy paper implemented on the ground. This is why they insisted on inviting local politicians, NGO activists, and representatives of Roma and non-Roma institutions to discuss how it should be implemented.
What is also again important, now that you have these recommendations, which are really on hands-on, I had the opportunity to read them a couple of months ago, is to somehow make the parties implement this, adapt this to the local realities of the different various countries, because you can say that this is a recipe for all the countries participating in your program, but they can adapt it and they can start working on implementing and finding solutions for the problems based on the recommendations that your study is having.
Local initiatives, such as Viktor Lilov's music project for Roma kids, are key actors in implementation.
We've got that idea also from the musicians. It was not actually our own idea, but some of the musicians mentioned that maybe we could start something about the kids because they have nothing to do in the neighborhood. The whole day nothing happened in that ghetto. So let's do something. And in the beginning, we didn't believe this suggestion. We thought this is quite a foolish thing. These kids don't want to learn. Everybody knows that they don't want to learn. They don't want to go to school. They're lazy. They're looking something to steal. And though we were working with musicians, we knew that we have changed our perception a lot. But we thought that this is not serious. But then we thought, okay, why not doing it? And we actually got some support from people who thought like us that maybe actually it's worth trying to do this. So we thought, let's make a non-formal school, music school, where parents and some teachers will teach kids basic musical education, like writing notes and playing, and have some basic basic music education. So that if they go to, let's say, another band with Bulgarian musicians, they can get written music, they can read it and play.
Daniela Mikhailova works as an activist for the Equal Opportunities Initiative Association in Sofia. Her organization supports Roma integration, but the focus is a different one.
We are currently in Facultate Roma district. This is the biggest Roma settlement in Sofia and probably in the country. We have a bit more than 40,000 Roma living here. In the past, there were some Bulgarian families also, but in the last 15 years, they sold their houses, their property to Roma. So currently, the neighborhood is almost 100% Roma. And the people here do have problems in almost every sphere of public life, saying that, I mean, education, housing, healthcare, and a very, very high unemployment rate. We have three departments in the organization. The first one provides legal services and legal education and trainings for the people who need legal representation in cases of human rights abuses or discrimination on ethnic base. We provide legal expertise and also representation both before Bulgarian and international court institutions. And especially for the young people, we organize seminars and trainings on the internal legal framework. The second department is the educational department, and the colleagues who work for the educational program, they work with problems with early years education. They provide support for Roma families who prefer to enroll their children in mainstream schools.
Viktor Lilov, Daniela Mikhailova, and other participants from 7 countries of Central and Southeast Europe discussed the policy recommendations in 3 key areas: education, entrepreneurship, and access to basic services. The main question was, how can these policy recommendations be implemented at a local level? Making use of the entrepreneurial spirit of Roma is one recommendation of the policy paper. Yavor Alexiev, who chaired the relevant working group session, explains an important suggestion by participants: that access to credits for Roma business people must be improved.
We believe that the best way to go forward is to try and reduce Roma's difficulties of actually getting credit and increasing their creditworthiness. This might happen in many ways, but a key element is education, because when a Roma currently goes to the bank and asks for a loan, the Roma person tries to do that and start his own business, he is usually being evaluated as a high-risk client, so he gets high interest or he gets no loan at all. So what we have to do to address this issue is to target both the factors of the environment and the personal factors that determine his evaluation, his creditworthiness. And now, as far as personal factors go, this is usually the cash flow. Cash flow means employment. Employment means education. So education is the key to employment, and employment is the key to regular cash flow and access to credit. The other thing is, of course, the collateral that each individual has to pledge in order to get some kind of a loan. And this is important in order to spur entrepreneurship across Roma. And we believe that housing, one of the key issues that has been outlined by the European Commission in the last few years, the housing of Roma, this problem has to be solved finally, so we have to know if a Roma person has to know if his house is his, if he can put it as collateral, if he can take out a loan against it, if he can start a business. So one way or another, legislation has to come clear at this point, and this problem has to be solved once and forever.
There were also a number of concrete ideas on how to implement recommendations to improve access to education and educational facilities for children.
From my personal point of view, I think that, which is also close to my work, we would like to empower Romani parents to be well prepared first educators of their children, the first thing. The second thing is also dealing with the second chances for dropouts who would like to finish their formal education. Also, it's important to provide them with some chances for non-formal education. And then concerning Roma children, we would like all of them to achieve their full potential.
Participants left Sofia with a considerable number of ideas on how to put liberal proposals for Roma integration into practice at a local level.
I've took a lot of project ideas. I'll share with you only few. One of the project idea was to prepare a business guide for Roma people who are ready with business ideas, with business thinking, how to make a small, I'm not sure, it will be probably micro business, step by step to be written. Why not to be written in a Roma language? Why not to be in a national level? I mean that if we start with a small guide only for our municipality, that can be one very good practice to put it on a national level, why not on Balkan or European level?
I think it worked quite well, exchanging our experiences would create a good base for better using of these orientation papers in reality, in the practice, in the everyday practice.